to host Southeast Studies Symposium cooperating with University of Oxford. But the endeavor does not stop there. We will marching on and on. All for the sustainable environment and better life. From School of Environmental Science, Universitas Indonesia. For the humankind.
Indonesia's international webinar. This event is organized by the Research Center for Human Resources and Environment, School of Environmental Science, Universitas Indonesia, known as PPSML SILUI, in collaboration with the Center of Southeast Asia Studies, known as CSEAS, under the Asean Norwegian Cooperation Project on Local Capacity Building for Reducing Plastic Pollution in the Asian region, known as ASEANO. Before we start the meeting, I would like to share our general rules to ensure the webinars runs smoothly. First, all participants who attend this webinar through Zoom meetings must rename their accounts to include their names and institutions. Also, please make sure you are using the same name as written for your registration form. Second, please turn off your microphone during the event unless the committee or moderator asks you to turn it on. Third, we welcome our Zoom participants to kindly send your questions for each speaker using the chat box following this format. Your name, _institution, _speaker's name, _your question. In the meantime, our participants who attend this event through YouTube are also kindly welcome to send your questions using the YouTube live chat box following the same format as before. Your name, _institution, _speaker's name, _your question. The organizing committee will send the attendance and response form at 4:30 p.m. Western Indonesia time. All attending participants are requested to fill this form. This is very important because the organizing committee will provide your e-certificate and today's learning material only to those who registered, attended, and filled our attendance and response form. This event is recorded and broadcasted live through our official YouTube account, Humas SILUI, and participants can access today's learning material by checking our official YouTube channel or access our website at www.sil.ui.id.ac.id. For more information, don't be shy, please check our Instagram account at SILUI. So let us begin. The Honorable Mr. Dr. Triedi Budi Susilo, both Director of the School of Environmental Science, Universitas Indonesia, and the Head of Research Center for Human Resources and Environment, School of Environmental Science, Universitas Indonesia, or PPSML UI, the Honorable Keynote Speaker, the one and only Professor Emil Salim, the Honorable Speakers, Mr. Ujang Solihin Sidik, SSE Master of Science, as the Head of Sub-Directorate of PSLB3, Ministry of Environment and Forestry, Mr. Dr. Insinyur Mahawan Karuniasa MM, our lecturer at SILUI, Ms. Marian Olsen, PhD, the Research Director at Norwegian Institute for Water Research, or known as NIFA, Ms. Kakuko Nagatani Yoshida, the Regional Coordinator for Chemical Waste Air Quality Asia and Pacific Office, United Nations Environment Program, known as UNEP, and the Honorable Dr. Lugina Trimugi Astuti, SAMM, Associate at PPSML SILUI. Not to forget the respected leaders of PPSML UI, Head of the SILUI Study Program, SILUI lecturers, our dearly invited guests, and all international webinar participants who are visiting us today. A very warm welcome to us all who attended to this webinar. May peace and prosperity be upon everyone. You may have heard about World Environment Day. Well, to celebrate the latest World Environment Day 2021, today's webinar's theme is Ecosystem Restoration, Marine Litter, and Microplastic. This event is organized by PPSML SILUI in collaboration with Center of Southeast Asian Study, or CSEAS, under the Asian-Norwegian Cooperation Project on Local Capacity Building for Reducing Plastic Pollution in the Asian region known as ASEANO. Let me introduce myself. My name is Audrey Mujono, and I'm a doctoral student at the School of Environmental Science, Universitas Indonesia. On behalf of the organizing committee, I will accompany you through today's international webinar. There are 7 sections in this special event. First, listening to Indonesia's national anthem, Indonesia Raya. Second, welcoming and opening speech. Third, keynote speech. Fourth, photo session. Fifth, material presentation by key speakers. Sixth, discussion and Q&A. And the last one, photo session and closing. Ladies and gentlemen, let us listen to Indonesia Raya, Indonesia's national anthem, as we honor our beautiful country. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Now let's begin this event with the opening speech from Mr. Dr. Triedi Budi Susilo, both Director of the SILUI and the Head of PPSML SILUI. Mr. Budi, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Audrey. Good afternoon, distinguished guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great honor and pleasure to welcome you from all over the world to our international webinar organized by Pusat Penelitian Sumberdaya Manusia dan Lingkungan, Sekolah Ilmu Lingkungan Universitas Indonesia, in collaboration with the Center for Southeast Asian Studies, CSEAS, under the ASEAN-Norwegian Cooperation Project on local capacity building for reducing plastic pollution in the ASEAN region. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome our speakers personally, Ms. Kakuko Nagatani Yoshida, Regional Coordinator UNEP, and Ms. Marianne Olsen, Research Director NIFA. Thank you for coming. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Peace and blessing be upon every single one of you. Before we start our event, let us praise and give our gratitude to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala for His blessing and grace, for which we can meet virtually at today's webinar with the theme Ecosystem Restoration, Marine Litter and Microplastic. Alhamdulillah, we can meet in good health, even though we all are still facing the prolonged and wide-ranging COVID-19 pandemic, not only health aspect, but also the environmental, social and cultural and economic aspects. The webinar theme is very relevant in commemorating the latest World Environment Day theme, ecosystem restoration. Furthermore, Indonesia Sea state is currently facing serious problems due to general waste and plastic waste. We, of course, continue to strive with all our capabilities to overcome marine litter and microplastics problems by educating and socializing the issues to society. I was raised to always have faith. I have faith in the future generation and society who understand these problems' consequences with active participate, collaborate, and synergize to solve marine problems. On this occasion, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to speakers, namely Professor Dr. Emil Salim, Senior Lecturer at the School of Environmental Science, UI, Mr. Ujang Solihin Sidik, Magister of Science, Head of Subdirectorate of PSLB 3 KLHK, Dr. Insinyur Mahawan Karuniasa MM, Lecturer of the School of Environmental Science UI, Ms. Kakuko Nagatani Yoshida, UNEP Regional Coordinator, Ms. Marianne Olsen, PhD, NIFA Research Director, and Dr. Lina Tri Mugi Astuti, Associate PPSML SIL UI. And last but not least, ladies and gentlemen who represent universities, government institutions, non-governmental organizations, and other practitioners at home and abroad as webinar participants who have been pleased to attend and contribute their thoughts to this event. Not to forget, I would like to apologize if there are many shortcomings in organizing this webinar. I hope that this webinar will sow the seeds of fruitful discussions for marine litter and microplastic problems. As the final part of this speech, by saying Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, I officially open this international webinar event. Thank you and enjoy the event. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you for your insightful opening speech, Dr. Budi. Before I welcome the next speaker, tomorrow is Professor Emil's birthday. We would like to thank Prof. Emil for a happy birthday. We pray for a good health and a long life. Our deepest gratitude to listen to your knowledge and Pak Budi.
Yeah. Happy birthday for Professor Emil Salim. May God bless you.
Thank you. Dear friends, may I welcome all participants of this conference. I like to express my appreciation to all of them, and especially because we are discussing a special important topic, ecosystem restoration, marine litter, and microplastic, to commemorate the World Environment Day. Up until recently, I always embrace the slogan, small is beautiful. And I was in favor of all which is small, and I despise big, especially big conglomerates. So when suddenly, and I was shocked that in April 2021, few months ago, in the beach of Cheribon, a paus, a big fish, was found dead on the beach of Cheribon. When we opened the stomach of this paus fish, we found a huge amount of microplastic, of all dirt, which are consumed by this fish, by this paus. Suddenly, I realized that small microplastic can kill big fish like a paus. And when we then move towards the normal way of life, we find out that this microplastic is basically formed from a plastic. And we love plastic. We use plastic in our daily life. But when suddenly the plastic as a garbage becomes a danger, the government prohibits plastic use for shopping, and we use then recycled material. But I never know that microplastic still continue to dominate our life. So I was surprised when I found that we are discussing today the marine litter and microplastic. So I'll try to find out, what the hell is this microplastic? Why do we have microplastic? Why are we discussing microplastic? And to my surprise, I found that microplastic is entering all fish that we consume. We, in Indonesia, we consume ikan teri, a small fish. And even in that small fish, microplastic enters the body of this fish. We consume salt, and even in salt, microplastic also pollute the salt. So microplastic becomes a danger because we are consuming simple things like small fish, eat with salt and so on. So suddenly I realized microplastic, although it is small, it's not beautiful, it's a danger. So I'm glad when we are now discussing together the issue of this microplastic. And when I try to find out in literature how to cope with this, I was very surprised that scientists are already working on efforts to cope with this issue of microplastic. So I find literature which is dealing on the issue of microplastic, and we say fine, the writers, the Professor Michael Tony Sturm, Harold Horn, Katrine Schublanz, they wrote an article, The Removal of Microplastic from Water through Agglomeration Fixation using organodynamics, effects of polymer type, water composition, and temperature. Reading that article, I realized that there is a solution to cope with this plastic, microplastic. It's called, what is now called as organosilanes. What surprised me is that what makes me happy is that in spite of the fact that we have an unknown enemy like this microplastic, the brain power of human being, the scientists are able to solve, to cope with this danger, to find out that organocylins are one element that can be used to cope, to deal, to fight against microplastic. What does it mean? Science is able to meet the challenges of the world, of the new world that produce a pollution which up to now we don't know. So, dear friend, there is a way to cope with this microplastic. There is a theory, there are papers, there are science organocylins that can deal with this issue, produced by the scientists, international scientists. The lesson I learned is whatever danger we face in environment, there is always a possibility to cope with this through scientific development. It is therefore important that we, scientists all over the world, especially within Southeast Asia, we cooperate together to exchange ideas, to study further, to enhance our knowledge, and fight together all enemy of the environment that we know and we don't know. And together, we share our experience and knowledge and face the future to come, the new enemies which are unexpected coming up in the world today. And therefore, I welcome the possibility to have now a dialogue, a webinar, international meeting among us scientists in Southeast Asia to study, to learn, to discuss the ecosystem restoration, the marine litter and microplastic, to share our knowledge. And let's work together. Scientists have proven that by working together, whatever difficult the challenges are, however dangerous the microplastic are, science is able to solve this problem. And therefore, I welcome this opportunity of having to cooperate, to discuss together with you, to meet the challenges of microplastic within Asia, in Asia, through working together, cooperating together, through scientific exchange and knowledge development among us together. Thank you.
Thank you for your inspiring speech, Professor Emil. Once again, happy birthday. Move right along is a photo session. I would like to request all speakers, invited guests, and participants to turn on your camera. Let me check. Okay. I will help and guide the photo session with the help of our technical committee. Technical committee, please instruct us and count from 1 to 3. Don't forget to smile.
Okay, the first slide. 1, 2, 3. Next slide. One, two, three. Next slide. Okay. Next slide. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay, finish.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for your cooperation, ladies and gentlemen. Now that was only the beginning. Now, without further ado, let's begin with our main event, materials presentation by the key speakers about our today's theme, ecosystem restoration, marine litter, and microplastic. Before we start, I would like to introduce our moderator, Dr. Lina Trimugi Astuti. For those who don't know, Dr. Lina is a lecturer, researcher, and also a practitioner. She is a Secretary General in Indonesia's Environmental Scientists Association, known as IESA. She's a treasurer of credit union Binasroja. She's the founder or CEO of PT Enviro Total Solusi and a course teacher for waste management and system dynamics. She is an expert in strategic management, environmental management, and waste management. Over to you, Dr. Linda.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Audrey. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm Lina, the moderator of today's seminar. And firstly, I would like to thanks again to Professor Emil Salim as our supervisor and Indonesian environment leader that we know that ecosystem restoration and marine litter microplastic is very important to discuss among us. Also, especially to our audience, we say thank you for joining to this webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, having present with us today 4 speakers who are expert in the environmental issues, especially the problem of marine ecosystem pollution due to plastic waste. Our speaker is from government, lecturer, researcher who are pleased to share their experience and knowledge to us. I would like to introduce our speaker first. They are Mr. Ujang Solihin Sidik SSEMSC. He has a nickname Mr. Uso. I have known him for several times. I know him as a persistent person and fighting for the plastic reduction. Good afternoon, Mr. Uso. Please allow me to call you Mr. Uso.
It's okay. Yeah, it's okay. Good afternoon, Ibu Lina.
Yes. Yes, Mr. Uso is the head of Directorate of Waste Management and Hazardous Waste Management, Ministry of Environmental and Forestry. He represented the Director General due to assignment. Mr. Ujang Solihin will present about the regulations about the plastic and his experience to plastic reduction is Dr. Mahawan Karuniasa. Good afternoon, Dr. Mahawan. Dr. Mahawan is a lecturer. Yes, yeah. Yes. Hope you stay in health. Lecturer at the School of Environment Science, Universitas Indonesia. Apart from being a lecturer, he is also the founder of Environment Institute, and he's involved in many national and international organizations. As chairman of Indonesia Expert Network on Climate Change and Forestry. He also head of the Cooperation Committee for the Association of Environmental Science Study Program, or we call in Indonesia SILUI, and also a member of the Capacity Building Committee at the United Nations Climate Change. He also a delegation of the Republic Indonesia to the Climate Change Conference. He has expertise in environment, especially climate change and sustainable development and system thinking. You are such a good leader for environmental, Dr. Mahawan. And Dr. Mahawan will share about waste and circular economy today. And the third speaker is Ms. Kakuko Nagatani Yoshida. Unfortunately, she didn't join with us now, but he will join maybe late. Miss Kaku, Chemical Waste and Air Quality at the United Nations Environmental Program Asia and the Pacific Office in Bangkok. She is currently overseeing UNEP regional portfolio on plastic pollution, chemicals, and mercury management and air quality and health. Project Circular and Countermeasure are among UNEP flagship project that she has designed. So she has many projects for UNEP. Ms. Kakuko has more than 20 years of professional experience in the implementation of multilateral environmental agreements, integrated environmental assessment, and conservation education. Ms. Kakuko facilitated more than 150 multi-stakeholder consultation, planning exercise, and training in 40 plus countries across 3 continents. She holds a degree of MSc in environmental management from the University of Stirling in UK. Yes, we're proud to know you, Ms. Kakuko. And she will deliver the material about plastic pollution, global issue, regional corporation, and local. Speaker is Dr. Marianne Olsen. Let me call you Dr. Olsen. Good afternoon. Good morning, Dr. Olsen, because in Norway it's still morning, right?
Yes, that's right. It's 10 o'clock, so well, not very early morning, but a few hours behind you. That's right. And please feel free to also to call me Marianne. That's my first name, and that's what most people call me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, yes. Dr. Olsen is a research director at NIVA and former research manager at the section of environmental contaminants. She has a degree in marine biology from University of Oslo, and she has PhD in ecological, focusing on mercury contaminated sediment and uptake of mercury in the food chain. Dr. Marianne works widely with issues related to environmental contamination, from mapping and monitoring, uptake and bioaccumulation in the food chain to action planning, and includes plastic pollution. And she's involved in plastic project nationally and in Asia. Dr. Marianne Olsen has extensive experience in a project manager with responsibility for large research and study project, especially related to industrial pollution, and she has work experience from industry, authorities, and research. She has worked extensively with stakeholder involvement, participation, and dissemination. You are such a great researcher. We are lucky to meet you in this webinar. Dr. Marianne Olsen will share about short overview of the activities within ASEANO in the context of environmental concern related to marine litter and microplastic, including a short overview of what we know about environmental effect from plastic pollution, and probably also touch upon mitigation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, now we come to the first presentation from Mr. Uso. Mr. Uso, you have 15 minutes, and now time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Linda. Please allow me share my presentation. Okay. Sorry, let me just wait a moment. Yeah, actually, I was just the wrong file. Please be patient.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Hopefully, everybody already seen my presentation.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
it is
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
already seen.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Especially my special person, Profesor M. Salim. Selamat ulang tahun Pak, selalu sehat, luar biasa Bapak tetap sehat hari ini. Semoga tetap sehat terus. Also this good afternoon, distinguished speakers to who's joining this webinar today, and of course, ladies and gentlemen, for you all, selamat sore. Yeah, I'm firstly very sorry, apologize from our DG Ibu Pipin because he couldn't join this webinar. So he assigned me to join this webinar to share some information about the policy and program action in addressing marine plastic pollution in Indonesia. Yeah, my name is Ujang Solihin Sidik. Ibu Lina already introduced me. I usually see to be called USO. I'm a Deputy Director for Goods and Packaging in Directorate of Solid Waste Management in Directorate General for Solid Waste, Hazardous Waste, and Hazardous Substance Management in KLHK. So I already provided this presentation in English, but please allow me present in Bahasa. Sorry for Marian and also Miss from under the speaker. Baik, Bapak Ibu sekalian, ini saya akan hari ini akan bicara soal kebijakan dan program aksi bagaimana pemerintah Indonesia overcome atau coba menghandle, menangani soal marine plastic pollution, termasuk di dalamnya adalah microplastic. Jadi hari ini saya akan bicara secara singkat beberapa hal yang sudah dilakukan oleh pemerintah. Jadi ini pertama, yang pasti pemerintah melalui Undang-Undang Pengelolaan Sampah nomor 18 tahun 2008 dan PP nomor 81 2012 ini sudah meletakkan dasar bahwa Indonesia ingin merubah paradigma pengelolaan sampahnya. Yang tadi hanya bertumpu ke dalam pada end of pipe solution, hanya bertumpu kepada TPA, secara bertahap bergerak ke arah yang lebih advance, mulai dari penerapan 3R, mulai juga penerapan Extended Producer Responsibility IPR, sampai yang lebih advance tentunya bicara soal yang saat ini sudah tren menjadi dasar ekonomi ke depan, dasar ekonomi berkelanjutan, yaitu circular economy, yang nanti juga akan disampaikan oleh speaker yang lain. Jadi pemerintah ini sudah meletakkan soal arah kebijakan ini dalam konteks pengelolaan sampah khususnya tentu menjadi lebih baik. Kemudian pemerintah juga sudah menerapkan, sudah mengeluarkan yang namanya National Policy and Strategy, atau dalam bahasa Indonesia JAKSRANAS, Kebijakan dan Strategi Nasional Pengelolaan Sampah 2018-2025 yang diatur di dalam Peraturan Presiden nomor 97/2017. Di situ sudah di-set target yang harus dicapai oleh bangsa ini dalam sampai tahun 2025, yaitu target pengurangan sampah dan target penanganan sampah. Perlu saya informasikan, pengelolaan sampah dalam konteks Indonesia itu ada dua komponen besar, yaitu pengurangan sampah di sumber dan penanganan sampah. Jadi ini sudah ditetapkan targetnya sampai 2025. Pemerintah Indonesia, bangsa kita ingin mengurangi sampah yang timbul di sumber sampai 30% di tahun 2025 dan menangani sampah tentunya dengan baik, handling waste properly di tahun 2025 70%, sehingga totally kita bisa mengelola sampah kita dengan baik 100%. Ini adalah cita-cita yang memang sangat mungkin sangat ambisius, tapi ya mari kita bergerak dengan cita-cita ambisius, dengan cita-cita yang tinggi supaya kita bisa mengelola sampah kita dengan lebih baik. Ini sudah diatur di dalam Perpres 97 2017. Kemudian ini adalah targetnya, tadi sudah saya sampaikan bahwa di tahun 2025 kita punya target mengurangi sampah di sumbernya sebesar 30% dan menangani sampah dengan baik tentunya sebesar 70%. Diharapkan 100% sampah kita dapat terkelola dengan baik. ada beberapa indikator yang bisa mengukur keberhasilan kita sebagai bangsa untuk mencapai target-target tersebut. Ada target untuk menurunkan waste generation per kapita. Indonesia saat ini rata-rata memang tiap kota berbeda, tetapi secara rata-rata kami menetapkan waste generation per kapita adalah 0,7 kg per orang per hari. Maka diharapkan ke depan seharusnya angka itu menjadi turun. Tetapi nampaknya di beberapa kota besar seperti di Surabaya, Jakarta, di sini angkanya cukup tinggi, lebih dari 0,7. Tetapi ini ada target kita bersama. Yang kedua, ya kita ingin mengurangi sampah yang berasal dari sumbernya dengan melaksanakan prinsip community based 3Rs, membatasi, mendaur ulang, dan menggunakan kembali sampah kita. Yang ketiga tentunya ada indikator yang lain. Dengan kegiatan pengurangan sampah itu kita berharap ada pengurangan sampah yang bocor ke lingkungan. Itu yang terkait dengan pengurangan di sumber. Kemudian penanganan sampah, ini penanganan dilakukan oleh teman-teman kami di kabupaten kota. Ini adalah sistem formal yang dilakukan oleh pemerintah kabupaten kota dalam menangani sampah. Dengan indikator ini, indikatornya jelas bahwa seharusnya sampah yang diolah menjadi bahan baku daur ulang, menjadi kompos, menjadi biogas, menjadi sumber energi, menjadi RDF itu harusnya semakin meningkat. Dan kedua, secara otomatis sampah yang ditimbun di TPA, yang dibawa ke TPA, ke landfill itu semakin sedikit seharusnya. Dan yang ketiga, kita juga menginginkan dalam konteks penanganan sampah ini semakin sedikit sampah yang bocor ke lingkungan dalam proses penanganan. Ketika target-target ini berhasil kita capai, kita laksanakan sebaik-baiknya, maka ada target lain yang sudah juga menjadi target komitmen bangsa ini adalah mengurangi 70% marine plastic litter di tahun 2025. Ini sudah sudah dinyatakan dengan tegas di Peraturan Presiden nomor 83 tahun 2018. Jadi Indonesia punya target yang lain untuk mengurangi 70% marine plastik, khususnya plastik ya, marine litter di tahun 2025. Jadi mengingat bahwa berdasarkan riset 80% sampah yang bocor ke laut itu bersumber dari darat, maka ketika kita di darat berhasil menyelesaikan urusan sampah tadi dengan mengurangi 30% dan menangani 70% dengan baik, maka diharapkan kami yakin sampah yang bocor ke laut dapat dikurangi. Dan mudah-mudahan capaian 70% itu bisa kita laksanakan bersama. Berikutnya, ini adalah beberapa policy strategi yang sudah dikeluarkan oleh pemerintah Indonesia. Paling tidak saya coba ringkas menjadi 5 aspek. Yang pertama soal law, regulation, prosedur, kriteria, and standar. Kita sudah menerbitkan beberapa aturan terkait dengan ini, regulasi, NSPK istilahnya, norma, standar, prosedur, dan seterusnya. Ini sudah banyak kita keluarkan, ada undang-undangnya, ada PP-nya, ada peraturan presidennya, ada peraturan menteri di berbagai sektor, baik di KLHK maupun di PUPR atau di kementerian yang lain. Ini sudah banyak kita menghasilkan regulasi. Kemudian aspek yang kedua yang juga penting adalah bagaimana pemerintah meningkatkan kinerja kapasitas pengelolaan sampah di kabupaten kota. Karena berdasarkan undang-undang, pengelolaan sampah, penyelenggaraan pengelolaan sampah adalah urusan wajib pemerintah kabupaten kota. Jadi pemerintah pusat termasuk kami di KLHK punya tugas untuk membantu mereka meningkatkan kapasitas dan kinerja mereka dalam pengelolaan sampah. Dengan berbagai instrumen tentunya, ada pilot project, ada juga subsidi dalam bentuk dana alokasi khusus, ada juga instrumen baru berlaku 2 tahun terakhir ini, dana insentif daerah untuk kabupaten kota yang berhasil mengurangi sampah plastiknya, ada juga infrastruktur hijau, ada capacity building, dan seterusnya. Ada bantuan sarana prasarana sudah pasti, ini juga dilakukan oleh pemerintah pusat kepada teman-teman kami di kabupaten kota. Termasuk di dalamnya ada research and development. Tadi Prof. Aimil sudah meng-highlight soal bagaimana peran akademisi, bagaimana peran peneliti untuk mencari solusi terhadap persoalan marine litter and microplastic ini. Ini juga menjadi bagian penting yang dilakukan oleh pemerintah saat ini. Kemudian berikutnya aspek soal bagaimana membangun masyarakat tadi. Karena masyarakat itu menjadi ujung tombak dalam urusan pengolahan sampah, bagaimana membangun responsible community melalui komunikasi, informasi, dan edukasi. Ini ada program-program penyadaran publik, awareness raising, dan seterusnya. Ini kami juga lakukan, baik kami dengan kementerian lain, dengan pemerintah daerah, dengan komunitas, teman-teman komunitas, dengan teman-teman NGO, dan seterusnya. Kami lakukan beberapa program untuk bagaimana membangun responsible community. Karena ini tantangan kita bersama, Bapak Ibu sekalian, berdasarkan hasil survei perilaku yang dilakukan oleh BPS, Badan Pusat Statistik tahun 2018, ternyata perilaku mereka mengeluarkan laporan namanya Indeks Ketidakpedulian Lingkungan Hidup. Ternyata di situ hasilnya 72% masyarakat Indonesia memang belum peduli soal urusan sampah. Ini PR besar buat kita. Saya kira ini kita harus bekerja bersama, berkolaborasi bagaimana membangun kesadaran publik, membangun kepedulian publik dalam konteks pengolahan sampah, termasuk di dalamnya adalah marine plastic and microplastic. Yang keempat ini juga sangat penting, Bapak Ibu sekalian, pemerintah sudah mengeluarkan aturan terkait bagaimana para produsen ikut juga bertanggung jawab untuk membantu pemerintah ngurusin sampah ini, khususnya sampah plastik. Ini ada policy yang mungkin lebih populer disebut sebagai producer EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility. Ini sudah diatur, ada aturannya, kami sudah mengeluarkan peraturan menteri terkait ini, bagaimana pemerintah mendorong, meminta pertanggungjawaban para produsen yang menghasilkan produk yang di situ ada kemasannya untuk ikut bertanggung jawab bersama pemerintah. Termasuk sumber sampah laut dan sumber mikroplastik itu mungkin paling besar. Mostly comes from packaging, khususnya plastik packaging. Jadi ini kami juga meminta mereka untuk mulai ikut bertanggung jawab bersama pemerintah. Yang keempat, yang kelima tentunya kami juga membangun kemitraan kerjasama dengan badan-badan internasional, donor dengan mulai UNEP, melalui UNIA, UNDP dan seterusnya. Di level ASEAN juga dengan G20 juga atau dengan bilateral dengan negara lain. Dalam konteks termasuk dengan pemerintah Norwegia, saya kira juga sangat erat kalau ketika bicara marine litter and microplastic. Salah satu penyokong utama resolusi PBB terkait marine litter dan microplastic adalah Norwegia. Dan Indonesia salah satu pendukungnya. Ketika itu resolusi itu dibangun di badan PBB. Ini
sorry, Mr. Oso, I interrupt you. You have 3 minutes more.
Oke, siap. Oke. Berikut adalah pendekatan lain khusus untuk plastik tadi, mengurangi sampah plastik ke laut dan mikroplastik. Ini bagaimana kita ingin mengurangi dari sumbernya, sekaligus circulating plastic waste supaya tidak banyak bocor ke lingkungan. Jadi dari sisi produksi dan penggunaannya juga kita atur. Kemudian tadi dari sisi infrastruktur, pengelolaan sistemnya juga kita improve. Dari sisi public engagement-nya, termasuk law enforcement juga kita garap. Kemudian dari sisi reduction at source-nya juga kita bangun, bagaimana publik harus mengurangi sampah sejak dari sumbernya. Kemudian dari sisi produsen juga bagaimana mereka melakukan redesign produk and packaging, supaya tadi tidak semuanya menjadi sampah atau tidak harus melulu menjadi sampah. Berikutnya adalah ini contoh karena kami di Indonesia punya namanya National Plan of Action on Marine Litter. Jadi Indonesia sudah menerbitkan di dalam Perpres 83 itu ada tim koordinasi nasional untuk penanganan sampah laut. Ini saya sampaikan di sini adalah beberapa strategi yang dibangun di dalam NPA on marine plastic litter tersebut. Ada riset, yang pertama National Movement for Stakeholders Awareness, yang kedua strategi kedua ada Land-Based Solid Waste Management, yang ketiga ada Sea-Based Solid Waste Management, yang keempat adalah Financial Mechanism Institutional Strengthening, Surveillance and Law Enforcement, dan yang kelima adalah Research and Development. Jadi ini ada strategi besar bagaimana pemerintah Indonesia ingin mengurangi sampah laut dan mikroplastik tentunya. Grafik sebelahnya adalah keterlibatan seluruh kementerian atau lembaga yang terkait. Ini ada kurang lebih saat ini ada 17 kementerian dan lembaga yang terkait berkolaborasi dalam rangka mengurangi sampah laut. Ada KLHK, Kemenwarkes, dan seterusnya, ada Kementerian Perindustrian, PU, dan bisa dilihat dengan jumlah tugasnya masing-masing berbeda. Bisa kita lihat ada tugas yang banyak, hanya satu aja, yang 16 Kementerian Perindustrian punya tugas yang banyak, KLHK ada 6 tugas, KKP ada 9 rencana aksi yang harus dilakukan. Kemudian ini terakhir, ini adalah Marine Plastic Reduction Target and Achievement berdasarkan tadi NPA, MPL, Indonesia punya target mengurangi sampah plastik dan termasuk di dalam mikroplastik adalah 70% di tahun 2000. Jadi ini targetnya saya kira harus turun di 2020 dengan baseline data berdasarkan baseline data tahun 2018. Untuk sementara di grafik ini menunjukkan ada penurunan berdasarkan hasil simulasi kami di tim koordinasi nasional. Ini ada berita baik, hasil simulasi ternyata ada penurunan yang setiap tahunnya sampai tahun 2020 ini. Ada jumlah penurunannya, ada presentasi penurunannya. Ini data-data yang sementara yang bisa kami share untuk Bapak Ibu sekalian. Ini terakhir, ini adalah beberapa kegiatan program yang sedang saat ini kami lakukan. Improving data quality and management, tentunya ini data menjadi sangat penting karena data menjadi faktor utama untuk keberhasilan mengukur upaya kita, kinerja kita. Mainstreaming pengolahan sampah dan pengolahan sampah laut di konteks kebijakan nasional, baik di RPJMN, Jaksanas, RPJMD, dan seterusnya. Kemudian kita masih berjalan untuk tahun ketiga, NPA, MPL. Kami juga sudah menerapkan punya roadmap untuk bagaimana produsen bertanggung jawab. Kita sudah nyusun roadmap pengurangan sampah oleh produsen 2020-2029. Ada juga, ini menarik, nomor 5, sudah ada 57 pemerintah kabupaten kota, 2 provinsi termasuk yang mengeluarkan kebijakan pembatasan plastik sekali pakai. Ada kantong plastik, ada sedotan plastik, ada plastik foam container. Kemudian juga kami juga bersama Kementerian Perindustrian dan Kementerian Perdagangan sedang menyusun peta jalan untuk pemenuhan bahan baku daur ulang dalam negeri, agar kita tidak tergantung lagi pada importasi plastik scrap dan paper scrap. 7, improving terus-menerus untuk pengumpulan, pemilahan, pengumpulan, dan seterusnya. Kemudian membangun standar yang diperlukan, recyclability, reusability, compostability, dan seterusnya, termasuk recycle content. Kemudian penyediaan infrastruktur tambahan untuk teman-teman kami di kabupaten kota. Kemudian yang nomor 10, kami juga sudah merencanakan membangun 10 RDF facilities, Refuse Derived Fuel Facilities, dan 11 Waste to Energy Facilities. Sampai tahun 2001, Indonesia sudah punya 1 RDF facility yang beroperasi dan 1 WTE plan yang sudah beroperasi. Kemudian yang sudah melanjutkan kerjasama internasional. Saya kira itu yang bisa saya sampaikan. That's all my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Yes.
Saya kembalikan ke Bu Lina.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Uso. Good presentation. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that was the presentation by Mr. Uso from KLHK, where the emphasis is on Indonesian policy and strategy on reduction and handling the plastic waste. Yeah, and we see that it have to achieve at 2025. So we still have 5 years to achieve the target. Yeah. And it is connected to Dr. Mahawan presentation, because Dr. Mahawan will talk about circular economy. Yeah, perhaps this idea from Dr. Mahawan can complete the strategy of KLHK also. So we come to next presentation by Dr. Mahawan. And Dr. Mahawan, you have 15 minutes to present your idea, and time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Lina. Let me share the slide first. Hoping that you can see my slide. I will try to enhance.
Yes, already. You can see, Pak Mahawan.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lina, and first I would like to thanks to distinguished speakers, Pak Uso from the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, and also Dr. Marina Olsen. Thank you very much. I'm pleasure to be here together with you, and also Ms. Kakuko that will join later. And also this opportunity, I would like to say to Pak Prof. Emil, selamat ulang tahun, sehat selalu. And also thank you to Dr. Budi, Director of School of Environment Science. If you see on my slide that I don't put the picture of the marine ecosystem, but I put the picture of the population. I would like to see this restoration, ecosystem restoration from the environmental science perspective, which we need to see from not only from the ecological aspect, but also need to from the social and also the economic aspect. So that's why this opportunity I would like to underline about the relation of the waste, especially plastic waste, and how to address this through the circular economy in Indonesia. And I will also would like to share the latest my working policy paper to support the Bappenas and Minister of Environment and Forestry related to this issue. And I will present in bahasa when necessary to ensure that the message could be well delivered to the participant. Firstly, I would like to invite you to recall the definition of the ecosystem restoration based on the UNEP. The ecosystem restoration means assisting in the recovery of ecosystems that have been degraded or destroyed, as well as conserving the ecosystem that are still intact. It means that we have two domains of restoration. We could assist the recovery of ecosystem which have already degraded or destroyed, but also we also could conserving the ecosystem that is still intact. And I'm sure that we know that the healthier ecosystem will have a richer biodiversity, will provide us the more fertile soil, bigger yield of timber and fish, and also larger stores on greenhouse gases related to the we are now facing the climate change. And the next slide, I would like to invite you that we actually already destroyed the ecosystem for paddy field. For an example, in Java Island, it was not a paddy field ecosystem; it was a forest. And also, I think in Sumatra, for an example, in Kalimantan, we destroyed the ecosystem for planting the palm oil. And also, not only in Indonesia, it happened in developing countries, it happened in small island developing state, it happened in least developed countries, and also happened in developed countries, maybe not now, but in the previous times. So for an example, change on the tulip plantation changed the original ecosystem. And the question is that should we restore into its original ecosystem? From paddy to original to the forest, Java forest, and all from palm oil, and need to return to the tropical rainforest. The answer is that UNEP also recognized this, that it is not always possible to return to the original ecosystem because we need food, we need housing, we need farmland to provide food, we need water dam to control flood, to provide irrigation, and also we need to build power plant for our electricity and for other daily life energy needs. So it's not always possible. So we need to back to the law of carrying capacity, and we need to be aware that we only have one planet. We don't have planet B. And based on some findings that actually now, especially in 2016, we have already exceed the carrying capacity. We have exceed up to 170% of the what planet can provide to us. And for comparison, in 1960s, the human took about around 75% of what that planet could regenerate annually. So that's why we have a reason to be collaborate, to be involved in this decade of ecosystem restoration, because we cannot continue with that pathways. We need to bend the pathways to be harmonized with our one on the planet. So how to address this, especially related to the 80% of plastic waste which come from land-based sources? How the role of the circular economy is already mentioned by Pak Uso previously. And the first is that how to contribute through this circular economy into the first domain of ecosystem restoration, assisting the ecosystem recovery. And second domain is how the role of circular economy on conserving the natural ecosystem. And the first is that we need to be aware that the rule of waste and income. And Pak Uso mentioned that the Minister of Environment and Forestry have planned to reduce the waste per capita. Is very challenging, Pak Uso, because the data show like this: more income, more waste. So it's very challenging. In terms of generating waste, we have challenging on reducing the waste per capita, and so that's why the circular economy is important on how to reduce in the upstream area. As you mentioned, that we have a plan on 2025, we need to reduce about 30% from the oil process, especially in upstream process. And based on this, last year I conducted the study on circular economy to support the Bappenas and Minister of Environment and Forestry how to design the circular economy in Indonesia. And we focus on 5 economic sectors which provide around 82% of total solid waste. If we refer to the data from the Minister of Environment and Forestry, the waste is only include the household and related household waste. So it's excluded the for example electronic waste and other solid waste. And the total, as mentioned by Pak Uso, is 67.1 million ton in 2019, and from that is about 10 million is plastic waste, about 15%. So how to address this issue using the circular economy approach? And if we see the trend from 2011 until 2019, there is a trend on increasing trend of waste because 2 things. The first is population. In Indonesia, we're still increasing the total population of Indonesian, and also increasing of income per capita, as I mentioned in previous slides, that is also increasing waste generation. But the good news is that waste intensity in this sector, this 5 sector, there is indication that decreasing during the last decade. So that is a good news for us. It means that without the significant policies from the government, the markets also already process the circular economy, but in the very simple way, only very slight decreasing on this process. And as we now would want to in detail discuss about the circular economy, but this is not only discuss about the material, but also it's about emission, is related to the climate change, how to cope with climate change. It's also about the water use. It's about the green job. So how to address this at the same time. So this is opportunity for Indonesia, how to design the circular economy on addressing not only related to ecosystem restoration, but also to provide a green job. But in this opportunity, I would like to underline the result of this process from the model of circular economy in Indonesia that we have developed, and it also consider about the low carbon development in Indonesia. Is already consider the what we call the national determined contribution to 2030, and also consider the national strategy and policy of waste management, which plan to reduce 30% in 2025. And the good news is that the result is on some scenario, especially the scenario 2 and scenario, especially scenario 2. Based on producer approach, we can see that the scenario is above the business as usual. It means it's and the best scenario on this process on implementing the circular economy is to mix the customer and producer approach, because if we only prohibited people to consume the product from the industry, it will give a significant impact to the economic itself. So it's very challenging. It's very challenging how to design the circular economy. So the best way is we need to mix the approach. But in this model, the producer approach it's better in this process. But in reality, we need to discuss in more detail about this, how to address this, how to design the circular economy in Indonesia with this two approach. And the result is that in 2030, we can reduce about 27% in implementing the circular economy compared to business as usual in terms of the total number of waste generated in 2030. And also at the same time, the circular economy produce additional GDP around 5% at that time. So that is that's a good scenario to be implemented in Indonesia. But unfortunately, that through this scenario, we still provide around 11 million plastic in 2030. So it means that we need to scale up. We need to scale up, and we need to speed up on implementing the circular economy, because we rush with the population increase and also the increase of income per capita. So back to the restoring ecosystem. So the role of circular economy is the first is we can reduce in terms of plastic material, to reduce that. And the second is to provide the green capital, the green finance on funding the restoration on ecosystem restoration. So this is the process. Based on this study, the circular economy could provide not only reducing the number of plastic, but also providing additional economic value in 2030. But again, that the recommendation from this study is we need to scale up, we need to expand, we need to accelerate the implementation of circular economy in Indonesia. But it's not only from the government sides, but also need support from private sectors, also from community, and also from the academician. And related to this, I think is I do thanks for this seminar, and I think we need to continue with strengthening the collaboration, research collaboration, or engagement among scientists in especially in Southeast Asia on addressing this issue. I think I stop here. Ibu Lina, thank you very much. Over to you, Ibu Lina.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mahawan, Dr. Mahawan, very smart presentation. And we have some idea about the circular economic models that made by system thinking method, because Dr. Mahawan is also expertise in system thinking. So he want to share about how the model can be mixed, yeah, to make a circular economy for implementation of circular economy. And next, before we invite Ms. Olsen, I think I want to make some notes from Dr. Mahawan presentation that the challenge is in waste volume, because there is correlation about the income and waste. So that is hard to maybe hard to achieve what Mr. Uso present prior, yeah. And then it needs fully support from society and government, and also other parties, NGO maybe, to enter the decade of restoration, because without support from all stakeholders, it maybe it's hard to achieve the target and hard to achieve the restoration or ecosystem restoration. Well, next presentation, we turn to Dr. Olsen. While we waiting for Ms. Kakuko that will join later, Dr. Olsen will share about the short overview of the activities within ASEANO and the context of environmental concern related to marine litter and microplastic. Yes, as her expertise as in contaminant, yeah. So I think we can have some insight from Dr. Olsen about the danger of microplastic, I think. Yeah. Okay, Dr. Olsen, you have 15 minutes and time is yours.
Thank you very much. And please just confirm that my presentation is visible for all of you.
Yes, already.
Thank you. So first of all, I would like to thank for the invitation, and oops, lots of things happening very quickly here. I would like to thank you for the invitation to join this international webinar and to speak. And I'm really delighted to hear all of the interesting presentations and the valuable contributions. So first of all, I would like to just present my institute, the Norwegian Institute for Water Research. We are Norway's leading environmental water research institute, and we were established by the Research Council of Norway back in 1958. So we're actually more than 60 years old, and but since 86 we have been a private foundation. So NIVA is a group, and we consist of the foundation and several subsidiaries, and we are situated with a main office in the capital of Norway, in Oslo, but we also have international offices in Chile, in Beijing, and in Denmark. And we are more than 400 employees, and what we do is that we perform research and investigations and find solutions to environmental challenges. We are working with the authorities, with private sector, and of course on research-funded projects. Then I will move to the ASEANO project, the ASEAN Norway Cooperation Project on local capacity building for reducing plastic pollution in the ASEAN region, where we work together with the PPSML, CSEAS, and the ASEAN Secretariat, and of course the embassy. The main outcomes of the ASEAN project is sort of based on 4 pillars. we are aiming at identifying reduction measures for key industry sectors. We are working on monitoring methods and capacity building for doing environmental monitoring of marine or plastic litter, both in rivers and also on the flux of litter from rivers into the marine ecosystem. We are working on impacts of plastic pollution and also measures to reduce plastic pollution. And this is a capacity building project. So obviously there's a lot of exchange of knowledge between our institute and our project partners with dissemination activities. These outcomes are aiming at answering the main objective of the project to improve capacity to tackle plastic pollution from key sources. And of course, this all fits very well with the global goals that we all know very well. So in this presentation, it is mainly the monitoring methods and the impacts of plastic pollution that I will try to link up to the state of art and the knowledge that we have so far. So within the project, what we do is that we, in harmonization with global processes, try to establish a suite of standard methods for environmental monitoring of litter. And as we work together with institutes in Indonesia, in the Philippines, and in Vietnam, we also build capacity on monitoring in pilot river catchment systems. And we also work on modeling to establish methods for quantification of the fluxes into the ocean. I would also like to emphasize that there is a social science component of the project, and we try to link this, of course, very closely with environmental monitoring, with the purpose of, in the future, to see that measures taking on land and further up the value chain also is possible to monitor and to see the effects from these measures out in the environment. Okay, so moving to today's topic more in detail regarding ecosystem restoration and plastics. I think we can all agree that the impact from plastic pollution is so obvious that there is no doubt that measures has to be taken. Still, and since the plastic pollution is so widely distributed, we need to look into the details when it comes to restoration. These pictures are very impressive. I'm sure that you have seen many like this, and the enormous efforts that has been put down by thousands of volunteers have resulted in some amazing achievements, cleaning beaches and shorelines all over the world. In many cases, this can give us an impression that we have come very far in finding solutions to the plastic problem. But I think we should be very careful in celebrating this too soon. We still have a long way to go, even though we have seen results like this. So clean beaches are great, and locally it may also prevent impact on natural wildlife, for example, on turtles entering beaches to breed, and it may also reduce the amount of litter being washed back into the ocean. However, the beaches are often the site where plastic litter ends. So by cleaning, we are working really at the very end of the linear value chain. So to be able to reduce the impact from marine litter on ecosystems, we will need to do more, we need to know more, and we need to find the best possible measures. So ecosystem restoration is really much more than beach cleaning. And that's where I will sort of start my story now. And already here, I think I will present to you two main take-home messages from my speech. And I would like to emphasize the active sources, and of course this is very much in line with the previous speakers. As long as we have active sources, any cleanups will only be temporary. And that's why we really need to work on the sources. They must be identified and they must be stopped. And to stop the pollution, measures are needed along the entire value chain of plastics, from production to waste handling. The other take-home message is that also mitigation actions may have adverse effects on the ecosystem. And what we have seen increasingly for the last years is that there are a lot of innovations and good ideas. People are working all over the world to find solutions on how to collect both macroplastic litter floating in rivers and oceans, and also to try to clean the seabed, to try to clean beaches, and also to use machines to make this efficient. I believe that among all these good ideas, there are also some that really will have value in the long run. But I will also make a point that it is extremely important that we try to understand the short and long-term effects of mitigations, because there is no quick fix, and I think we have learned this from decades of other environmental pollution issues. There is really no quick fix, and we always have to sort of see the pros and cons to find the best way, so that we don't make more harm in our efforts to try to improve the situations. So in addition to understand these adverse effects, of course, we need to know the ecosystems that we are dealing with, the functions, and also the goals for these ecosystems when we think of restoration. It's quite obvious that we have a lot of plastic in nature that should not be there, but we also see situations where this plastic is sort of stored in soil and sediment, and to remove it, we actually have to make quite massive actions, which can also have, as I say, adverse effects. So how can then monitoring, as we do in the ASEANO project, support the identification of feasible measures, and also help us to decide upon what kind of measures that we need to take? So one challenge that we have to face here is that we still have a lack of standard protocols, and this lack of harmonized methods for both gathering and reporting of the data present actually a major obstacle for the implementation of both the monitoring and also the mitigation actions. And that's why it is so extremely important that we keep on developing good monitoring methods, that we share the knowledge that we have, and that we find the methods that are feasible for the sites where we work on. So this is where we work also within the ASEANO project. And the purpose of monitoring is also important to keep in mind. So it is both to assess the contamination, the present situations, to compare data in time and space, and also to compare them with environmental standards, if they exist. And again, it is to bring these data into the understanding of impacts, the effects and the risk, the environmental risk that the pollution represents. So to do so, methods need to be harmonized and they need to be comparable. This is an example demonstrating the challenges in comparing data. So this is from last year, and by then it was 26 published studies that was looked into, reporting plastic waste flows in rivers globally. And actually these 26 published studies, they utilize 7 different methods for assessing flows of plastics in the river, which makes it very difficult to actually compare these data. So when it comes to then the guidelines for monitoring both marine and riverine litter, through the last 10 years, the number of these kind of publications has increased exponentially, particularly in the field of microplastics, and many papers are addressing abundance in the environment, reporting on observations. And basically, based on this, we can see that microplastics are found really everywhere and in more or less all kind of environmental matrices. However, the methods that are used varies a lot, and so do the ways the results are reported, as I mentioned earlier. So the need for harmonization of this kind of methods is really obvious. And to be able to really fully understand the impact of trends and not least effects, this harmonization is so important. Global partnerships and collaboration is crucial in order to get this data that are really of value to us. And efforts like this GESAMP group under the UNEP is extremely important, and also other conventions and agreements take responsibility and do really important work to come up with these harmonized methods. So there is improvements, but we still have a way to go. When it comes to the effects and risk assessments, I would say that this field of science is still in its infancy. And when we look into the number of publications and what they are addressing, we still see that the largest number of publications is addressing, as I said, the abundance, and then effects and risk assessments is increasing, but it's not yet at the same level as this reporting of the abundance. So we still have knowledge gaps to be able to actually do environmental risk assessments. And one example of this is revealed through this report. It's a Norwegian report. It was published in 2019. It's from the Norwegian Scientific Committee for Food and Environment. And they did an assessment of microplastics with an attempt to look into both human health related to food and environmental risk. So this is a review. It's based on the 2,000 identified papers. Out of these 2,000 papers, actually only 270 papers was included because the quality of the rest of the papers was not good enough or did not bring a basis for comparison across all these papers. So what they did in this publication was to attempt to do a risk assessment after the standard approaches, where you compare the predicted environment concentrations with the predicted no effect concentrations. Looking into all these papers, I'm here showing you quite a busy slide, but of course, don't expect you to see this, but on the x-axis is the different size classes of microplastic particles. On the y-axis is all the different studies and endpoints that have been reported in these studies. And what we see when we look into this is that effects have been documented mainly on the individual levels and mainly on death or growth inhibition. So the question is then how to bring this to an ecosystem level. What is exactly causing the effects? And of course, how can we come up with standards and predicted no effect concentrations with regard to microplastics? I don't have the answer here. It's still, as I say, in its infancy. But it demonstrates the challenges that we face when we try to understand the effect and the risk. So in this report, our authorities concluded that the available information does not yet provide sufficient basis to actually perform a risk assessment of the environment impact of both nano and actually microplastics. So there are large data gaps still, but based actually on this assessment on a global scale, they found that there is not evidence for a large environmental risk to be seen here. So trying to summarize, I think I'm close to spending my 15 minutes now. I would say on the challenges that we still have to face I would like to mention the monitoring. I would like to mention the understanding of effects, and I would like to repeat what I said on the mitigation measures. So on the monitoring, there is a fact that we don't have a baseline for or background data for plastics environment, and yet plastic pollution is not regularly monitored. I don't have the full global overview, but I can say that for Norway's sake, this year, our Norwegian Environment Agency have initiated the first regular monitoring program on microplastics. I have said that we still have lack of standardized methods for measuring or reporting, which complicates our need to compare across time and space. And also environmental standards are in development, but not yet in place. So when it comes to the effects, as I have shown you, there is still little knowledge about the effects, and we don't have a clear method to assess ecosystem effects or risk of plastics. And then on the mitigations, there is no standardized cleanup methods, and there is also lack of knowledge on the effects of cleanup. And we don't have a decision tool to decide upon what to do, where, and when. So that's my little insight into the situation. And I would like to just repeat myself, stating that unless we work on the active sources in order to reduce the amount of waste and to stop the waste from entering the aquatic environment, we will not be able to protect our ecosystems from the plastic pollution. But this is a global awareness and global effort. And I would like to support Dr. Emil in saying that the human minds have solved and are able to solve this as well. And I do believe that we, with joint effort, can find solutions also to this enormous problem. So that's all from me, and thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Olsen, for your great sharing for us today. This is the challenge for the scientists to have the method, how to create the mitigation method. And I make some notes from Dr. Olsen's presentation. Is cleanup is not enough. Cleanup action is not enough because it needs mitigation, and for mitigation we need data for good monitoring and mitigation action. And the more important also how to improve capacity to tackle plastic pollution from key source, because it's not only cleanup, but we also have a standard method. So thank you, Dr. Olsen. And now we come to the last presenter, the last speaker, Ms. Kakuko. She will share for us about the plastic pollution, and maybe a technical committee can help Ms. Kakuko to spread her presentation. And Ms. Kakuko, time is yours.
Thank you. I have requested, I've done the recording of my presentation, so it will be better that from your end, it's played first. Thank you. Greetings from Bangkok. This is Kakuko Yoshida of United Nations Environment Programme, Asia and the Pacific Office. I would like to take a few minutes to speak about plastic pollution, global issue, regional cooperation, or action. Plastic pollution is issue of our time. United Nations Environment Assembly Resolution 4/6, Marine Plastic Litter and Microplastics, adopted in March 2019, ask for strengthening of scientific and technological knowledge about marine plastic litter, particularly on the aspect of sources, pathway, and hazard. Globally, the issue of plastic pollution have already caught attention of leaders beyond the environment sector. For example, G20 Osaka Blue Ocean Vision aim to reduce additional pollution by marine plastic litter to zero by 2050. As follow-up to the previously said resolution of UNEA, I think many of you know that there is an ongoing discussion at the ministerial level to start preparing for a potentially global treaty to control plastic pollution, including marine plastic litter and microplastics. There will be a ministerial conference on marine litter and plastic pollution on 1st to 2nd of September 2021. Currently, there are preparatory meeting happening, and this ministerial process is supported by 4 countries in particular: Ecuador, Germany, Ghana, and Vietnam. And from our region, Vietnam will be co-chair of the preparatory meeting that will be happening end of July. There are a number of global and regional hard and soft laws and plans to address plastic pollution. One of the most recent is Plastic Amendment of the Basel Convention on the Control of Transboundary Movement of Hazardous Waste and their Disposal. With the amendment of Annex 2, 8, and 9, the Convention provides a provision to increase the control over transboundary movement of plastic waste. One example of the regional soft law is Regional Action Plan on Marine Litter by Coordinating Body on the Seas of East Asia and its 9 member countries. Originally adopted in 2008, the plan was revised in 2019 to align with United Nations Environment Assembly and SDG 2030 agenda. The plan guides regional action to prevent marine litter from land-based sources and sea-based sources, and to strengthen monitoring assessment and create enabling conditions for action. It also established COP-C Working Group on Marine Litter. There are other regional marine litter frameworks. UNEP is particularly encouraged by the Regional Action Plan on Combating Marine Debris in ASEAN member states, which was launched just the other day on 28th of May. The plan embraces approach to a circular economy, acknowledging that marine debris is also a land issue, and waste collection rate in ASEAN have to increase drastically to be able to minimize the waste leakage, and also the participation of business sector to improve the management of plastic value chain is essential. Now that we have established plastic pollution being the global issue requiring global and regional action, I would like to spend the remaining of my time today to highlight that the fighting the plastic pandemic calls for a paradigm shift, particularly in 3 areas. 1, cultures and behavior related to plastic value chain. Number 2, breaking the myth about plastic pollution, particularly where it originates and how it becomes pollution. And number 3, leadership in development. First, culture shift to enable better plastic value chain management. Whenever we talk about plastic pollution and possible solution, people are often quick to highlight waste management, particularly plastic recycling, to be the solution. While improvement on waste management and recycling included is very important, it's very also essential to understand that for plastic recycling to be significant, first, waste collection and segregation at the point of disposal need to be improved. Unfortunately, currently in ASEAN country, only about a half of municipal solid waste is collected in formal waste collection system. And segregation in many cities is non-existent. In such cases, plastic waste mixed with hazardous substances, food waste, and come very contaminated and almost providing no value to recycling. Also, another context important to understand is that currently we are living in the exponential growth of plastic production and use. And much of that plastic being produced are in the area of packaging and single-use plastics. Now, these materials are not designed with this recycling or the circularity in mind. Therefore, even though people have a certain willingness to recycle, in reality, the plastic recycling will remain low. So overall here, in this context, the major cultural shift needed in the government, in business, and consumers' mind, so that we can reduce virgin plastic made from the fossil fuel, going to single-use plastic, and also reduce the leakage of plastic pollution in every step of plastic value chain. In changing the people behavior, particularly consumer, one thing that is very important to note is that there is a big gap between the awareness and actual shift in the action or behavior as a consumer. About a year and a half ago, we conducted a survey among a few ASEAN countries to understand the perception the consumers have both in cities and rural area about the plastic pollution and what kind of action they're willing to take to reduce plastic pollution. Are they, as a consumer, about the extent of plastic waste issue? For example, in Indonesia, the overwhelming majority, more than 90% of the respondents said that they are, yes, very extremely concerned about plastic waste. However, when the same group of respondents was asked what kind of action they would take as a consumer in purchasing the goods using the awareness, they say that only 40% say that they will look at the product recyclability information and less likely to buy if non-recyclable. This means that even though majority of consumers are concerned about plastic pollution or plastic waste issue, when it comes to choosing which product to buy, they are not really using that awareness as the first choice of action element to decide what to buy. Most likely there are other issues such as maybe price or how attractive the product is or availability, accessibility to the product is becoming the dominant element for them to make choice. Now I want to talk about the second aspect that require more attention from us, which is the breaking myth about what is actually causing plastic pollution. When we start talking about the plastic pollution and government need to take action, among the first plastic item that we saw government enacting ban or control over was PET bottle, particularly the water beverage bottles. But when we went to the cleanup on beaches, for example, in Thailand, Layong, as you see, we didn't find many plastic bottle, PET bottle, but instead what we found is a lot of the food wrappers, small sachet, multi-layer snack packages, and things like this synthetic rubber band that are often in a large quantity used in a food store to close a small plastic bag containing the condiments or the takeaway, take-home food items. So when you look at these two images only, you wonder, is it an enacting ban or policy targeting PET bottle? Is the priority or the other items that are actually contributing to plastic pollution? Now here it's very important that these plastic items, what contributing to plastic pollution, how they are contributing, becoming leakage, is very much local contextualized. Therefore, the situation we see in Thailand will not be necessarily applicable in Philippines or Indonesia or a country in Africa. Another major missing link between the science and policy and information we have found is the lack of information about land-based plastic pollution. I think you have heard more than once that 80% of plastic pollution or marine litter is coming from land-based sources. However, when you look for information, scientific information in Asia Pacific region that showing how, let's say, rivers or waterway carry the plastic pollution through the system and making it reach coastal area or marine environment, there is a very limited information available. That's why, for example, the UNEP has started a project called Countermeasure, focusing in on identifying the information that show pathway and hotspot along the major riverway as Mekong and Ganges. We in particular look for 4 different types of hotspot: plastic value chain hotspot, leakage source hotspot, accumulation hotspot, and application hotspot. The value chain hotspot, for example, can be the industrial sector. Throughout their production life stage, there are risks for the leakage of plastic into the environment. Another one is leakage source hotspots. Example here are, for example, the illegal dump site, littering hotspot, area without regular or formal waste collection service, which I spoke about earlier also as a major risk. Another one is accumulation hotspot. The location that can be a bit far from the original leakage point, but because of the geographical form or the certain artificial infrastructure exists, locally or regionally, the plastic waste tend to accumulate before it further push into the environment. And lastly, but not least, is the plastic application hotspot, where certain plastic products such as micro beads, tobacco, little sachet, fishing gear, by the nature of the product design and application, they have higher risk of leakage and becoming plastic pollution. How I know all this? Because we conduct microplastic survey and macroplastic survey in key locations with participation of the local partners and communities. And through those on-the-ground researches and collection of data, we will be able to geolocate plastic accumulation hotspot, as you see in the Chiang Rai and Bangkok in Thailand, and also how the in Ubon Ratchathani as a city see the multiple hotspots of the plastic leakage, plastic accumulation along the major river and tributary. We also place a lot of importance in conducting microplastic survey within the river water. Partnering with Pirica Association, they have conducted microplastic survey and testing in more than 100 rivers in Japan. We carried out survey in 33 locations along the Mekong River. Out of those 33, the 30 locations detected microplastic, and the microplastic concentration in the river water increased drastically as the river flows. Also, we found here, like in a macroplastic survey as well, the plastic pollution in microplastics is also site-specific. For example, in Japan, the PE was most predominant type of polymer in microplastics, but in the waters in Mekong, polypropylene PP was most predominant. And what we found from this analysis along the river is that there is a quite likely that there are large plastic leakage sites between each city. So not only the big cities, capital cities, are important to reduce plastic pollution, but also the rural community, medium and small size cities are important area for attention. To continue breaking the myths surrounding plastic pollution, where it comes from, and what kind of solutions are actually effective to reduce the leakage. On the 2nd of June, we organized, under our collaboration between UNEP, Google, and Geoinformatics Center of Asian Institute of Technology, a new webinar series on discovering plastic leakage hotspots using technology such as artificial intelligence, the big data processing, image recognition, supported by citizen science. And hopefully continuing with the engagement of technology provider and citizen science support, we hope to be able to produce heat map of plastic pollution and plastic leakage hotspots in major cities where we work. And currently, as I speak, we are having a image annotation drive to improve the accuracy of technology of artificial intelligence and image recognition. If you're interested, this annotation drive is continuing until the Ocean Day tomorrow. This is a site, please click in and contribute. And scientific information and policy insight are now converted into virtual platform for further learning. For example, in collaboration with Open University, the MOOC course on marine litter and microplastic is now available in 5 regionally used languages: Chinese, English, Indonesia Bahasa, Thai, and Vietnamese. More than 5,000 people in the region have benefited from this course. And tomorrow, under the leadership of UNSCAP and their project Closing the Loop, we'll be launching a new e-learning platform on cities and marine plastic pollution. This is a collaboration with SCAP and the 10 other global and regional organizations. And every November, we organize Sea of Solutions, whereby a wide range of stakeholders in the region could come together, share their commitments, progress information, and challenge related to minimizing plastic pollution. This year, November, it will be hosted by the government of Malaysia. And the third element that requiring our further attention is the aspect of leadership. In this, I would like to acknowledge the strong leadership demonstrated by Indonesia. As some of you may know, that next year, G20 will be hosted by the government of Indonesia, and the likely theme being Recover Together, Recover Stronger, with elements such as SDG, COVID-19 recovery, digital transformation, and strengthening multilateralism. All of these elements are essential in our fight against plastic pollution. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you find this presentation useful in today's discussion. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Kakuko, for your great presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, we have listened to the presentation by Ms. Kakuko, which emphasized on how to fighting the plastic pandemic for a paradigm shift. Yeah, we have to change the paradigm, and it's including the culture and also leadership in developing the policy. I think we have some interesting data, yeah, by the survey among Asian country, and amazing that in Indonesia we have more than 16. They have concern about plastic waste. It is looks like against with the survey from Ministry Environmental and Forestry. So I think we can have more survey to make good data. And ladies and gentlemen, now we come to our end session. And before to come to the question and answer session, we say thank you for all the presentation of all the speaker. And I think all of us have thought a lot, yes, and after we listening to the sharing knowledge from the speaker, so I believe that there's many thoughts in the mind in our audience today, and you can share the thought, your thought and question in this session, and we'll try to divide the session by 3 sessions. And first session, we would like to invite question from lecturer from Universitas Indonesia. And the second session, we try to collect the related question from Zoom chatting and YouTube. And the last session, we'll try to give your a chance to give your question directly to the speaker. Okay, now we can come to first session. We have 40 minutes, 40 minutes to have opinion, question, and answer session. Okay, maybe the person we can give a chance for Professor Rahmadi Purnama, maybe Purwana. Maybe you can give your opinion and for this presentation today.
Yes. Thank you very much for the chance. I really appreciate this webinar and being invited. I think the problem of microplastic is a real problem. Perhaps if I listen correctly from Mrs. Olsen, Dr. Olsen from Europe, that not so many knowledge have been known about the problem of dealing with this kind of microplastic problems, but yet we need perhaps to understand that Indonesia is quite large parts of our country as its marine, perhaps the longest in the world, and the problem of plastic deposits. I think Indonesia sits in the second level. So we are facing a very big problem about plastic, but I really appreciate Miss Yosidas about selecting the parts of what kind of plastic and from what sources. And it is a good plan for the representative from KLHK Indonesia to consider as a good plan, and perhaps from Pak Mahawan also about the system thinking. We need to dig deeper about how the thinking can be built in a systematic way, because if we are speaking about the balance of ecosystem, we have to also understand that the civilization has already has the place at this stage. So we cannot return back to our previous older generations' way of life. Now plastic is part of our life. In fact, plastic is actually developed to deal with the problem of ecosystem because of the use of tree bark that is damaging to the forests. So perhaps plastic is expected to, to be used, recycled. And from Professor Emil Salim's speech about the whale eating plastic and the content of its stomach so much plastic, then we could understand what kind of plastic is being dumped into the ocean. So this is a real important steps that we need to do and make a further development. Thank you. That's all for my speech.
Okay. Yes. Thank you, Prof. Rahmadi, for your challenging question, I think. So we welcome to Ms. Olsen. Maybe you want to respond to the question first, please. And then after that, we give turn to Ms. Kakuko. Please, Ms. Olsen.
Thank you, Lina. So I think it would be very nice to have some thoughts around how to sort of bring the knowledge from scientists into implementation. So because there are so many actors working in the field of plastic, and I think we all have the same goal, but there is yes, many stakeholders, and the knowledge is being built by scientists. And as I say, to have this knowledge actually brought into decision processes, I think that, and also to other stakeholders and the public, I think it would be very nice to have some thoughts and discussions around how can we as scientists contribute not only to the scientific community, but to the authorities and to other actors, also from the private sector, for example, and NGOs. So that would be good, I think, to have some reflections around that. So that is not a question for anyone specific. Maybe that's
yes, understood, Dr. Olsen, because very hard to bring scientists to the action because there's so many obstacles in the field, I know. And I think maybe Mr. Uso and Mr. Mahawan can respond also with Prof. Rahmadi question or Prof. Rahmadi opinion, please.
Baik, thanks. Terima kasih. Thanks Pak Dr. Rahmadi. I will respond in bahasa. Sebetulnya pemerintah sudah mengeluarkan aturan, tadi saya sampaikan Pak, di Peraturan Menteri LHK nomor P75 2019. Itu adalah roadmap pengurangan sampah oleh produsen. Di dalam muatan pengurangan sampah itu termasuk yang paling fokus, yang paling besar adalah plastik, Pak. Di situ dirinci jenis-jenis plastik apa yang harus dikurangi oleh produsen. Mulai dari PET, PE, HDPE maupun LDPE, kemudian juga yang PVC. Bahkan di dalam aturan itu sudah diatur phasing out beberapa jenis plastik, Pak. Misalnya jenis plastik sekali pakai yang di phasing out di tahun 2029 adalah kemasan saset yang ukurannya 50 ml atau 50 gram ke bawah, itu di phasing out. Kemudian sedotan plastik juga di phasing out, Pak, yang menempel di produk. Jadi beberapa produk PVC untuk kemasan pangan juga di phasing out. Jadi kami sudah melihat dari jenis plastiknya bahkan detail. Selain plastik, kami juga di jenis kertas, aluminium can, dan juga kaca. Ini sudah ada roadmap-nya. Silakan dicek untuk lebih jelas di peraturan Menteri LHK tersebut. Sudah ada di website kami di KLHK. Saya kira itu respon dari saya. Terima kasih.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Uso. Maybe Ms. Kakuko, you want to respond Prof. Rahmadi opinion?
Yes, thank you. I would like to first thank Professor Rahmadi for picking up the key points I was trying to convey so well. I think what we are looking at is a systemic change in the different parts of it. Otherwise, as Professor say, we are not here trying to achieve this unachievable world without plastic. What we want is a world in Indonesia without plastic pollution. But plastic will stay because plastic is important. It gives a lot of benefit. Particularly, we saw how much the plastic, the mask or the shield or the protective gear that in the COVID time has helped to save lives and made us to continue our modern lives. I mean, it's not possible to eliminate plastic. That's not the world we are trying to go. Even looking at the environmental benefit, plastic has brought a lot of efficiency and reduction in the resources that we will be using otherwise. So what we want is systemic change to reduce plastic leakage into the environment. And because plastic is so useful, we want to retain the value as long as possible. So we want to reduce new virgin plastic coming to the market because we have type of product, we have circular closed loop system that will allow us to continue the minimum input of oil-based, fossil fuel-based plastic to be going around the circle and so that we enjoy the benefit. So here, I think anything we can do with UNEP and our partners to share the finding we have, how to set up microplastic survey network, how to work with consumers so that the gap I talked about will be less in society like Indonesia. We'll be happy to work together. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Kakuko. I think this is connected to a model from Pak Mahawan. So I think Pak Mahawan can also respond the concern of Prof. Rahmadi. Please,
thank you, Dr. Lina. I think I would like to respond in brief related to the comment from Prof. Rahmadi. Firstly, that we need to be aware related to the waste and income based on the research from the Indonesian Institute, Indonesian Research Institute, that the plastic consumption of Indonesia is still much lower compared to our neighbors countries such as Malaysia, Thailand, and Singapore. So we must be careful with this because still increasing the consumption of plastic. But as Ms. Kakuki explained that we have some benefit on working with that, but there are two things that we need to address. The first is we need to change the daily behavior of peoples on wasting, on using plastic and throwing the plastic on the street, something like that. And the second is we cannot avoid that the management of waste management from the municipality, from the city, and from the city-run Indonesia should be drastically changed about it. If not, we will still back to what we have already now as business as usual, just collect and then throw to the area. And as we know that 80% will pollute the marine as we already discussed about that. I think that's my comment to
yes,
Lina. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mahawan, because yes, I agree, because pollution in marine it can come from land-based sources. So I think the municipal waste management is very important to handle. So yes, next time we would like to invite Mr. Dr. Suyut. Dr. Suyut Warna Utomo. Dr. Suyut Warna Utomo is one of lecturer in Universitas Indonesia at Universitas Indonesia. So maybe you're willing to provide feedback or question, Dr. Suyut, please.
Yes, thank you for moderator. I would like to know about the impact of human health. So, Dr. Mariane, maybe you can explain a little more detail about.
Could you please more loudly, Pak Suyut, because we cannot hear.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a short question about the human impact of microplastic. Maybe Dr. Mariane can explain more detail. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, please, Dr. Alson.
Yes, so I would like to say that very little is known actually about direct effects on humans from microplastics. There is very little. Actually, it's very little that has been done. Also on microplastics within human body, because it's obviously a very difficult topic to investigate. So most of what has been known so far is the findings that has been from the studies of other organisms. But referring to the study that I had presented in my slides, as I said, the Norwegian Scientific Committee for Food and Environment, they have assessed the amount of microplastics that can be found in different food items and tried to extrapolate from the knowledge that we have from organisms to humans, following the standard approaches for this kind of assessments. So this means that this takes several steps. Of course, first it is the amount of microplastics found in different food items. That is a question. So it's a question about the exposure. But the main challenge here is to try to come up with the predicted no effect concentration. That's sort of the threshold where we expect effects to occur. And working on this, I'm sure you and many others knows that this is standard procedures based on toxicology studies in the lab, where you test different organisms and extrapolate to humans. So the basis for doing this for microplastics is not yet in place. There's not data to validate data to actually make this happen, and that's why the scientific committee in this report concluded that this cannot be done actually for humans, for the risk of humans. So I don't know if I answer your question directly, but the answer is that very little is known about the impact on human health. But it is, I could also add that, of course, it is a question of size of particles, because particles has to be on the nanoscale to actually be able to be sort of transported across cell membranes. So particles with a size that cannot cross membranes, they will pass through the human gut. So it's a theoretical chance that very, very small particles can pass membranes, but it doesn't mean that they do, even though they are small enough. And the one challenge also when it comes to these very small particles, we're talking about nano sizes, is that there is lack of methods for actually finding these particles in environmental samples. So working on nanomaterials is this is also still in its infancy. Basically, what we know about nanoparticles is from experimental studies and not from findings out in the environment. I'm generalizing a bit now, but that is the broad picture. So a lot of things we don't know, but I think it's also important not to scare people too much about the microplastics in food items. I think that's a very personal opinion, but I think that is actually important to say.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Olsen. Yes, we still need much research to have exactly about the microplastic. Yeah. And this is the challenge for School of Environment Universitas Indonesia, Pak Suyut. This is our challenge to make much research about this. Okay, now we would like to invite one student from SIL, maybe Ibu or Mrs. Sri Renarti. Do you have feedback or question on the material that presented today? Yes.
I think currently I not have any question.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the,
okay, thank you. Yeah, okay. Now we can go to second session of the Q&A, I think. I see that there's a lot of question in chat at Zoom, yeah, Zoom chatting. But I see that all question is addressed to Mr. Uso, and I want to choose two questions. Yeah, two questions for Mr. Uso, and allow me to read in bahasa. Dari Dahlia Silitonga, from Dahlia Silitonga, bagaimana menetapkan target dengan kondisi yang tidak realistis di lapangan? Apakah sudah ada evaluasi setiap tahunnya dan bentuk konkret upaya yang sudah dilakukan baik oleh pemerintah, lintas sektor, dan masyarakat? Pertanyaan dari Dahlia Silitonga. Kemudian saya mencoba untuk membacakan dua pertanyaan lagi, ya, dari Ibu Sri Endang Sukarsi. Mikroplastik dan limbah plastik ini masalah yang saat ini kita hadapi semakin mengkhawatirkan, tetapi upaya yang dilakukan belum dapat menyelesaikan masalah. Bagaimana berbagai cara sudah dilakukan oleh peneliti dan teman-teman CSO. Bagaimana narasumber, bagaimana menurut narasumber upaya strategis yang harus dilakukan. So this is the question also maybe can address to Ms. Kakuko and Ms. Olsen maybe, because they asked about how is the strategic action that we have to do to reduce the microplastic right now, because this very huge amount, yeah, in sea for today. So maybe Pak Uso, Mr. Uso bisa menjawab dulu pertanyaan dari Dahlia Silitonga, kemudian nanti baru ke narasumber yang lain. Please, Mr. Uso.
Baik, terima kasih Bu Dina. Thanks. I actually already answers the question from you, Bu Dahlia, directly, but yeah, let me also answer for everybody here. Of course, in bahasa. Jadi Betul, terima kasih Bu Dahlia, pertanyaan bagus. Saya kira untuk mengukur kinerja tadi yang saya sampaikan di awal, sebenarnya kami sudah membangun instrumen yang namanya neraca pengelolaan sampah. Jadi neraca pengelolaan sampah itu berisi dua komponen, pengurangan sampah dan penanganan sampah. Nah, di dalam neraca itu, ketika bicara pengurangan sampah, ini pengurangan sampah berasal dari mana saja mereka. Ini neraca ini dilakukan oleh teman-teman kami di PM Kabupaten Kota, karena tanggung jawab pengelolaan sampah ada di mereka. Mereka kami minta untuk mengisi kegiatan apa saja yang sudah mereka lakukan dalam konteks mengurangi sampah. Mulai dari sumbernya, misalnya tadi mengeluarkan kebijakan pelarangan kantong plastik, misalnya, itu harus masuk ke dalam neraca pengelolaan sampah. Begitupun di dalam penanganan sampah. Dalam penanganan sampah itu kami tanyakan, apa saja kegiatan di penanganan sampah? Mereka mengolah sampah jadi apa? Misalnya Surabaya jadi energi listrik, atau di Cilacap menjadi RDF sebagai bahan baku pabrik semen. Nah, itu harus masuk ke dalam neraca sampah. Dan neraca sampah itu kemudian harus diupload di dalam sistem informasi pengelolaan sampah nasional. Ini sudah ada sistemnya SIPSN, silakan Bapak Ibu sekalian bisa di googling. Di situ muncullah kinerja itu akhirnya. Kinerja setiap kabupaten kota muncul, kinerja setiap provinsi muncul, dan kinerja secara nasional muncul. Meskipun baru ada 288 kabupaten kota yang sudah menginput dari total 514, tapi ini paling tidak sudah bisa menggambarkan. Ini adalah instrumen evaluasi kami. Dan ini data ini harus diupdate setiap 2 kali setahun. Jadi ya mudah-mudahan ini memberikan informasi penting buat Bapak Ibu sekalian bahwa proses pengukuran kinerja itu dilakukan dengan instrumen yang tadi saya sampaikan. Saya kira itu Bu Lina yang bisa saya sampaikan untuk.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Mr. Uso. Yeah, maybe I would like to address to Dr. Olsen about the strategic action. Maybe you can answer the question from Ibu Endang. How the strategic action that we have to do to reduce the plastic waste.
Yes, so this was about microplastics, right?
Yes, disposable microplastic.
I wanted to give a comment to that, and I just have to say sorry that I can't follow all the discussions here, as I don't speak your language. But I would say that, of course, it is extremely difficult to clean up microplastics from the environment. Mm-hmm. That's absolutely a very big challenge, and of course, also trying to clean up microplastics means that you also sort of potentially capture other organisms the size of microplastics. So that's really not the way to move forward. But we have to make sure that we handle waste properly. Waste that potentially can degrade into microplastics. Of course, that's crucial. The other thing is that we also have to have control of the direct discharges, the sources to microplastics itself. And these sources can be various and multiple, but the wastewater treatment plants, there's a potential to capture a lot of microparticles in wastewater treatment plants. And to extract that from the effluents. Of course, then it's also important to think of what you use the sewage sludge for, because in many places around the world, sludge is used for soil improvements, and that is actually a loop where microplastics can be brought back into the environment and be discharged from soil and agriculture areas. But wastewater treatment plants is definitely a source where there is a potential. But of course, as I said, the waste handling is even more important.
Yes.
A lot of microplastics is actually also, fibers. There's a discussion whether cellulose-based fibers are actually microplastic, but they behave like microplastics, and also out in nature. So fibers from washing clothes, if the effluent from washing clothes is actually led into wastewater treatment plants, there is a very good opportunity to try to reduce the amount of particles that is actually reaching the aquatic environment. So that's some on this issue, but certainly cleaning out in the environment when the particles is out in open water or in sediments is extremely difficult.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Dr. Olson. Yes, I think the more important is waste handling at land-based source. Yeah. So maybe do you know how long does it the plastic waste degrade into microplastic? How long does it?
There is no one answer to that because it depends on the object itself, and it depends on the polymer type, and it depends on the environmental conditions. But I would like to say one thing that is related to this, and that is the definition of degradable plastics and also compostable plastics. Because there is a debate on the terms and definitions for this, and degradable plastics or compostable plastics, actually it used to be a definition that defined compostable plastics as plastics that had reached a certain size. That is the size of microplastics. So obviously this is being worked on globally within the European system, and I'm sure also in other bodies. And but this is also something to be aware of, because degradation into smaller pieces is happening also during composting of plastics. But I cannot say one number or one period of time in which it takes to degrade, because it really depends on the object and the polymer, the type of the product and the type of the plastic. It can take decades, but it can also take years.
Yes, and years. Okay, thank you, Dr. Olson. Okay, we almost finish our webinar. We have 5 minutes before we going to closing statement from speakers. I think I give audience a chance to ask directly by raise your hand. Make a raise hand in the Zoom. Is there any question directly to the speaker? If there's any, I think I want to have a closing statement from all the speakers, because we have 5 minutes to finish this webinar. Pak Usok, Mr. Usok, could you please to give your closing statement for this webinar today?
Okay, thank you, Ibu Lina. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, distinguished speakers. So let me give a closing statement for how we can handle this marine plastic litter and microplastic issue in Indonesia. I think we always believe that a collaborative action is needed to handle this issue. So government, business community, and academia should be work together with the close partnership how we can to handle this marine plastic and microplastic issue in Indonesia. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, Dr. Mahawan, please give your closing statement to audience.
Thank you, Dr. Rina. I think the first is we need to be aware about the growth of the population in Indonesia. And the second is that recall last year in June 2020, Indonesia has just entered the middle up income countries. So it will increase the waste generation, including plastic waste. So we need to accelerate, we need to expand the implementation of circular economy. In one side, could reduce the plastic as a material, as a waste, but at the same time also to this system also provide additional economic benefit and also provide the green job for the people. Thank you, Bu Lina.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mahawan. Then Dr. Austin, please give your closing statement for today.
Yes, thank you, and I fully agree with the ones that have been before me. I would say that bridging the gap also when it comes to science, bridging the gap between social science and environmental science is very important, because we need to see this in a holistic way and involve all the stakeholders that has to collaborate, like has been said before. But to bring the environmental scientists together with the social scientists, together with the authorities, together with NGOs and other stakeholders, I think that is what we need to find the feasible solutions. That's from me.
Yes, thank you. And then Ms. Kakuko, please give your closing statement.
Thank you. When I look at the plastic pollution and the size of challenge, I cannot help making the sort of mirror of plastic pollution and climate change challenge we face today. As you know, even we stop emitting greenhouse gas today, this very moment, we still live with the consequence of global warming for many decades, even centuries. So plastic pollution is a little bit like that. Even if we dropped and stopped using any new plastic today, the impact of microplastic will spread and we will see much more microplastic contamination in the environment. And that means that our action today is more important, not for just today, but for many generations to come. So we have no time to waste. We cannot waste plastic because they are valuable, and we cannot live with consuming plastic or living in harmony with plastic in nature. The plastic belongs to modern society, growth economy, and this is where the role of country like Indonesia is such important, because Indonesia population will grow and economy will grow. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Kakuko. Thank you very much for all speakers that have sharing the idea, knowledge, and data for us. And the conclusion of the presentation today that I can make some notes is ecosystem restoration need full attention from us, because it's very danger for ecosystem. Yes, so every stakeholder have to pay attention to reduce the marine litter, and is also affected to microplastic. And it needs a change, a behavior change. It's also need data, method, and also leadership. So, okay, ladies and gentlemen, that was the closing statement by our speaker and the closing for me as a moderator. Hopefully this webinar will give a benefit for us. The last but not least, stay healthy because it's still pandemic. Follow the health protocol wherever you are, wash your hands, wear masks, and keep your distance. Thank you for your attention. See you later. Over to MC. Thank you.
Thank you to all speakers, moderator, panelists, and participants for enthusiastically listening and asking questions. Before I close this event, for the last time, let us commemorate this event by taking photos. I would like to ask you guys to turn on your camera once again, and I will help and guide the photo session with the help of our technical committee. Technical committee, please instruct us by counting down from 1 to 3, and don't forget to smile.
Okay, the first slide, please smile, 1, 2, 3. Second slide, 1, 2, 3. Next slide, 1, 2, 3. Next slide. Okay, finish. Over to you.
Okay, thank you all for your cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the webinar. I sincerely thank everyone from our invited guests, speakers, moderators, panelists, and participants for taking the time to join us from the beginning until the end. It has been our pleasure to host this event. This event is organized by PPSML SILUI in collaboration with Center of Southeast Asia Studies, or CSEAS, and ASEANO. We hope that this webinar can inspire all of us and push forward to a better future. On behalf of the organizing committee in charge, we apologize for any mishap or discomfort throughout the course of this event. I wish you all a pleasant day. Thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at the next SILUI's next event. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, bye. See you later, Dr. Austin.
Bye.
Terima kasih Bu Lina.
Miss Kakuko.
Terima kasih Pak Usul. Sampai
Terima kasih,
bertemu
Pak.
lagi.
Pak Mahawan, Pak Usul.
Thank you.
See you.